Apparently, the, quote, noose that was found around Epstein's neck, indicating suicide, actually wasn't around his neck.
I think that the evidence points toward homicide rather than suicide.
Why?
Jeffrey Epstein's suicide story is crumbling, as Trump's Department of Justice, over a year later, has now decided to reveal that there was an orange-looking figure in Jeffrey Epstein's prison area the evening before he was found dead by suicide. You can help build the only independent news outlet always on the ground with the people for as low as 16 cents a day.
Corporate media, they've been lying to us for years, and you're going straight to the people.
Flint, Michigan.
Brooklyn, New York.
Government sending one more you to the residents of Chicago.
We need as many independent voices as possible, and that's why what you guys do is so important.
Covering what the corporate media covers up. Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. As we continue to cover Donald Trump's terror campaign on the ground in Minneapolis, and Trump continues his everyday distraction campaign from the tanking economy and his hour-by-hour crimes, Jeffrey Epstein's suicide story is crumbling, as Trump's Department of Justice, over a year later, has now decided to reveal that there was an orange-looking figure in Jeffrey Epstein's prison area the evening before he was found dead by suicide. Folks, this is capital S scandal, and under any other president, there would be immediate calls for criminal investigations, probably by both parties, I think, and more. Let me show you, this is from CBS News. Who entered Epstein's jail tier the night of his death? Newly released video logs appear to contradict the official counts. Newly released DOJ documents show investigators reviewing the surveillance footage from the night of Jeffrey Epstein's death observed an orange-colored shape. It was a shape, I say, moving up a staircase towards the isolated locked tier where his cell was located at approximately 10:39 p.m. on August 9th, 2019. The entry in an observation log of the video from the Metropolitan Correctional Center appears to suggest something previously unreported by authorities. I wonder why this went unreported for so long. Quote, a flash of orange looks to be going up the L tier stairs, could possibly be an inmate escorted up to that tier. It also appears, according to the FBI memorandum, that reviews by investigators led to disparate conclusions by the FBI and those examining the same video from the Department of Justice's Office of Inspector General. Here's the FBI log, describes the fuzzy image of a possible inmate, 1039, you see, could possibly be an inmate escorted up to that tier. But the Inspector General logs it as an officer carrying orange, quote, linen or bedding, noting it in their final report as an unidentified corrections officer. Now, prison employees interviewed by CBS said escorting an inmate at that hour would have been highly unusual. Which, common sense, we think a guard was escorting an inmate up to in Epstein's tier or jail area. Why would an inmate need escorting by a guard at 10:40 in the evening? And as that prison employee told CBS News, that would be highly unusual. Then you have neither officer, these were the officers who were supposed to be guarding Epstein and basically, controlling the jail area that night with inmates. Neither officer was specifically asked about the orange-colored figure noted in the video observation log. Yeah, let's interview them, but not ask about a possible unknown person traveling up towards Epstein's cell the night he, quote, killed himself. Bonholm told investigators he did not remember the period between 10 p.m. and midnight and said he had no recollection of anyone walking up the stairs towards Epstein's tier around 10:30 in the evening. He added that a jail employee entering a tier alone would have violated policy. So there is two prison employees stating would be unusual for a guard to be escorting an inmate that late at night, or a jail employee to be walking solo in the evening that late at night. Then you have Apparently, the, quote, noose that was found around Epstein's neck, indicating suicide, actually wasn't around his neck. Gee! By the way, I've been saying pretty much all along this was not suicide. And not based on conspiracy, based on reporting and facts, which I'll get to. But let's get to the noose, the missing noose. Kind of big deal here. Thomas told investigators he discovered Epstein in his cell shortly after 6:30 a.m. on August 10th and that he ripped Epstein down from the hanging position. Investigators asked what happened to the noose. I don't recall taking the noose off. I really don't, he replied. I don't recall taking the thing from around his neck. Noel, one of the prison guards who remained standing at the cell entrance, told investigators she saw Thomas lower Epstein to the floor but did not see a noose around his neck. Then where did the noose come from? The noose Epstein allegedly used has never been definitively identified. According to the Inspector General's report, a noose collected at the scene was later determined not to be the ligature used in Epstein's death. So he hung himself from the ceiling, although I've showed you in the past a former mafioso who stayed, who was an inmate in that prison, said there's no structural or logistical way to hang yourself in any of those cells. So he supposedly hung himself from what? If the guard took him down, but there was no noose around his neck, and they never identified the noose, I got a bridge to sell you. I got a bridge to sell you. Congressman Ted Lieu responded to this news that clearly the Trump DOJ has been burying for over a year now. Dear Judiciary GOP, you need to call Bill Barr, the former attorney general under Trump, who immediately blessed this as a suicide, said nothing to see here. Newly released video logs contradict official accounts of the night Epstein was found dead. And the noose at the scene was not what killed Epstein. Wait, WTF? That likely means some individual placed a noose at the scene. This is a congressman stating this, not I, not some YouTubers. I also want to point out, although this story is coming from CBS News, this was pitched to CBS News over a year ago. They basically said, conspiracy theory. This is from attorney Adam Cochran. When the video first came out, I pitched CBS and two other outlets on my findings of the sighting at 10:39 p.m., the edited video file and scoop on the FBI agents' names that edited it, the missing noose. CBS told me none were credible. Since then, they've reported all three almost a year later, acting as if it's some brand new finding they've uncovered from detective work. By the way, folks, separate from Jeffrey Epstein, I could do a whole documentary. Hell, I could do a whole ongoing series about major stories that corporate media, from the New York Times, the Washington Post, CBS, NBC, ABC, PBS, ignored or passed when pitched to them by journalists like me, including many of the bombshells that I released in my Flint Water book of 2024, We the Poison, Exposing the Flint Water Cover-Up, including the former governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, presiding over a criminal, deadly cover-up to bury the fact that people were drinking contaminated bacteria, deadly bacteria-soaked water, and he buried it. I had documents proving that years before I published them. All those outlets passed. Did they not care? Yes. But there's so many scandals in America, from environmental genocide to potential murder to shut up a global child sex ring leader, that these outlets just look the other way. But then when other people find it, suddenly they're exposing it. CBS has some explaining to do. So does the New York Times, by the way, who's ignored much of the Epstein saga for years. Now, this is going to be very difficult to see, but I just wanted to show you. This is circled here, but that is the orange-looking figure, which to me, I mean, it's hard to see, but it does. To me, I see a hand and an orange, at least an orange jumpsuit there. Onward. Adam Cochran again said, why did it take the Trump DOJ more than a year to admit that an unidentified individual is seen approaching Epstein's cell at 10:39 p.m.? Why was it not covered in the Office of Inspector General report? Why was it denied by the Patel FBI? Well, I mean, I just interviewed Congressman Ro Khanna and showed FBI Director Kash Patel perjuring himself to Congress last year. So it's not surprising at all that the Kash Patel FBI, Kash Patel, who as a podcaster was huffing and puffing that there was a massive cover up and scandal with Epstein. But then when he became FBI director, nothing to see here. And why do we still not have answers from the fact that videos have been edited and have digital paper trails showing the exact agent who did it, but no one questioned him under oath? Journalistically, this is called you cannot find what you don't look for. And for those that have never seen it, I keep playing this clip because I think it's important. Renowned forensic pathologist Michael Baden, Dr. Michael Baden, I believe very quickly after Epstein's suicide, he was asked by Epstein's brother, Mark, to observe the autopsy. He said, from what he saw, this was not a suicide.
I was asked by the brother, the next of kin, to be at the autopsy. And at the autopsy on day one, there were findings that were unusual for suicidal hanging and more consistent with ligature homicidal strangulation, which included...
And it was suggested at the time that he committed suicide by doing what?
By hanging. At the time, he was found allegedly hanging by a homemade ligature of sheets.
Are you saying you don't think it was suicide?
I think that the evidence points toward homicide rather than suicide.
Why?
Because there are multiple 3 fractures in the hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage, that are very unusual for suicide and more indicative of strangulation, homicidal strangulation.
Or indicative of homicidal strangulation. And I also want to show you Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark, who, by the way, not a small detail, sent a tip to the FBI in 2023 that he thought, here's the bottom, Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in his jail cell. I have reason to believe he was killed because he was about to name names. I believe President Trump authorized his murder. Let that sink in. Jeffrey Epstein's brother, not some crackpot, his brother tipped off the FBI. He thinks Trump ordered a hit on his brother. Here is Mark Epstein also talking about the fact that he asked for video from that area around Jeffrey Epstein's cell from the night before his death all the way to the morning. And here's what he was told.
Now, I asked to get the footage from that same camera under Freedom of Information Act from 10 o'clock the night before until noon the following morning. That would show who locked up the tier, who were the last people on that tier. And in the morning, it would show, Michael Thomas going in the guard and finding the body, and it would show what the situation was when they removed the body from the tier. I was initially told I couldn't get that footage because it was still an open investigation. Okay, I understand that. But then when the investigation was over, I asked for that footage again, okay? And I was now told that the cameras that were operating don't show that area.
That's right.
I have this in writing from the Bureau of Prisons.
Not to mention, as I've reported, and comes out in the Epstein files, the prison had a psychologist meeting with Epstein a month before his death, 2 weeks before his death. Epstein was cocky. He was looking forward to his bail hearing. He mocked the psychologist for even suggesting he might be suicidal or asking. He said, I would never kill myself. He was more concerned that he wasn't getting his constipation medication than suicidal. There was zero indication he was suicidal. In fact, there was indication he was excited for his bail hearing. Bottom line, Donald Trump, I believe it was in June 2019, as president, meets with Prince Andrew while Donald Trump was in the United Kingdom. We all know Prince Andrew's role in all of this. Epstein. I don't know what their discussion was, but they did meet. Michael Wolff's book, Siege, comes out in June of 2019 about Donald Trump. There's details in that book pertaining to Trump, Epstein, potential Trump money laundering, mortgage fraud, among other things. 3 weeks later, Trump's Department of Justice decides to arrest Jeffrey Epstein. Why then? Trump had been in office for years. They arrest Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein's now in prison. I don't know for a fact, but obviously Trump knew that this man had blackmailed elites all over the world. And Trump certainly knew that Epstein likely had some dirt on him, whether it involved his untoward or potentially illegal activity with young girls or financial crimes. And then Jeffrey Epstein is found suicided in his cell, apparently with no noose ever identified. You cannot make this up. Shame on the media for lazily peddling and laundering this nonsense about a suicide for years. This, obviously, victims getting justice is first and foremost the most important thing. Transparency, accountability for the predators that preyed on these young girls. But who killed him, how he died is directly related to all that. Because if he was murdered, it was to shut him up from potentially cooperating and revealing the crimes of others, potentially including the President of the United States.